work was founded on a long and growing love and understanding of the North, of being permeated with its spirit. I felt the brooding, lonely presence of nature fostering a new race, a new age, and as part of it, a new expression of art. To me, art is adventure in which I seek to regain unity with nature and the knowledge of my own immortal being. In the second decade of the 20th century, a new Canadian landscape movement was forged by several Toronto-based artists. These painters were drawn to the rock and water, the trees and space, almost infinite space, of Canada's northern wilderness regions.
The group of seven, Harris, MacDonald, Jackson, Varley, Lismer, Johnston, and Carmichael, they saw in the vast regions a deep, untouched reservoir of experience, which they relentlessly sought to explore and struggled to express in their paintings. For them, the pull of the North was something tangible, life-fulfilling. It fostered a quest to confront the mysterious, the unknown in nature and in themselves. They shared the challenge, working closely together in the North, often for extended periods of time, but each artist responded personally to his surroundings, searching for his own unique means of expression.
Toronto's Arts and Letters Club was a meeting place for writers, artists, critics, and patrons. Members of the group of seven met here regularly over lunch to discuss issues of the day and share their common goals. 3 years before the official founding of the group in 1920, this man, Tom Thompson, drowned in a wilderness lake at age 39. He played a critical role in the early years of the movement, inspiring the members by his love of the North. Lauren Harris had begun by painting urban views featuring brightly colored houses, but he was rapidly drawn to the stark, cleansing landscapes of the North. A.Y. Jackson, the gregarious Alec, had an uncomplicated love of the physical world reflected in his lively images, frequently of remote rural life in winter or early springtime. Arthur Lismer was an internationally respected art teacher. In his paintings, he attacked the northern motifs with vigor. His images can be blunt and rough, more hewn than painted. J.E.H. MacDonald, the poet of the group, sought to comprehend the ever-changing character of the bush, its countless moods of tenderness, of anger, or excitement. Frederick H. Varley, the bohemian, the dreamer, he worked in glimmering colors, creating emotionally charged landscapes as well as some of Canada's most sensitive portraits. Franklin Carmichael, a respected commercial artist and outstanding craftsman. His pictures are composed with care, his motifs crisp and defined. And finally, Franz Johnston, a gifted designer who reveled in the tangled patterns of the North. Johnston left the group prematurely, making room for A.J. Casson. Casson's paintings of rural Ontario towns and villages became a trademark, his oils and watercolors fresh and assured. Although their paintings were inspired by the rugged country landscapes, Tom Thompson and the group of 7 members were city dwellers, all regarding Toronto as their home base. Many of them worked in the city's design studios, where, to earn a living, they utilized their training as graphic artists. By the early 1900s, a portion of Ontario's vast hinterland had become accessible as roads and railways continued to open up. The province of Ontario's Northern Nature Reserve, Algonquin Park, an area 3 times larger than the country of Luxembourg, could now be reached by train. Members of the group took advantage of this luxury. Their trips to the north, which began in 1912, were usually of short duration, weekends or holidays, although they lasted up to 6 months in Thompson's case. They didn't settle in the wilderness. They were visitors, but visitors with a mission to comprehend this untouched, largely unpeopled world. An immense curiosity, a thrill and excitement of discovering landscapes never before painted, drew them repeatedly to Canada's virgin north, a world of lakes and rivers, forests of spruce, maple, birch, and pine, of deer, moose, wolf, and the haunting cry of the loon. The north was a feast of colors and forms, sometimes luxurious and opulent, sometimes raw and austere. But its beauty was distinctly Canadian, rugged and unpolished, not European, and the artists reveled in its rich physicality. Members of the group came to regard nature as a powerful spiritual force which might be comprehended through prolonged contact. J.E.H. MacDonald spoke of the need to paint the soul of things, the inner feeling, rather than the outward form. And Lauren Harris of his deeply moving experience of oneness with the spirit of the whole land. Nature approximated a religion, and each of their landscapes resulted in a public expression of their reverence. It wasn't so much the topographical details of the North they sought to impress upon the consciousness of their viewers in Canada's urban South, but the pervading mood of the region, its sense of solitude and release. Their paintings recreate the artist's experience in the landscape and the effect upon him, not only of sharp air and windswept pines, but of standing alone in communion with the whole cosmos. Many of the works of Thompson and the group effectively capture that rare but unforgettable moment when the mind can free itself from all associations of past and present and sense only the overwhelming reality of nature itself.
In this painting, group member Frederick H. Varley depicts symbolically the total integration of the human spirit with the physical world, a oneness with the cosmos known as dharana, a state of Buddhist contemplation which reveals the artist's fascination for Eastern religions. For Varley, the painting communicates explicitly what so many works by the group only imply: a yearning, a searching for absolute union with the natural world. To convert such a mystical experience into an accessible image is to afford every viewer the opportunity to recreate for themselves this fundamental encounter with the northern wilderness. Yet nature can be cruel and fickle. It's not, as Lismer has called it, always a paradise, for there lurks in the northern rivers and forests a force which can destroy us all. No one who's ever paddled a canoe can contemplate Tom Thomson's eulogy to the North, the west wind, without sensing the dangers of those waters, which brought his brief career to a tragic end.
When one's eyes strain to locate some haven, even a lone cottage or shack in the distant hills, one finds nothing but a blank, forbidding wall rising from the water's edge. With scant knowledge of a map, the suggestion that over those hilltops lies another turbulent lake and another empty shore. Yet the pine tree clings tenaciously, almost heroically, to the rocky outcrop. This is a tree which begs to be read metaphorically as a symbol of life and survival as Canadians continue to do battle with the elements. Much of the spirit of the North was expressed through the repeated use of the single dominant tree. No motif was more evocative. Trees also appear in dense clumps, as intricately patterned screens over the surface of the picture, or as protective framing devices to either side. Many of their paintings feature the countless northern lakes, seen through web-like arrangements of leaves and branches.
Painted rivers and streams, but curiously enough, never the awe-inspiring Falls at Niagara, a motif which had been so popular in the 19th century. Instead, they favored more intimately scaled effects of white water, with results which are nevertheless exhilarating and often turbulent.
In 1918, Harris arranged a painting trip to the area of Algoma, north of Sault Ste. Marie, using a railway boxcar as a base. In this region, and later along the north shore of Lake Superior, the images of the group, especially those of MacDonald and Harris, acquired a new feeling of majesty. Here, the breadth of the land draws us through rhythmic formations of rock and trees, finally to the immeasurable expanse of Lake Superior. In a land of hills swept bare by forest fires, Harris found a landscape which was to inspire many of his most remarkable paintings from the 1920s. Above Lake Superior is perhaps his most powerful. Through the central placement of the distant hillside and the framing trees to either side, the picture communicates the massive scale, the order and stillness of the land. Stark, elemental forms without natural texture or detail glow in an almost unearthly light. For Harris, this image was an expression of his deep awareness of nature's divine force and symbolized spiritual transcendence. Color was perhaps Thompson's and the group's most expressive tool, the most effective communicator of nature's shifting moods. They adopted the bold, aggressive colors of post-impressionists such as Vincent van Gogh, particularly appropriate to the intensity of a Canadian autumn. All members of the group studied the clear, hard Canadian light, its variation throughout the day, the seasons, and changing climate. The northern skies were keenly observed, particularly by Tom Thompson. His depiction of the crisp Ontario air contributes immeasurably to the authentic feel of his work. Forms in the landscape defy assimilation into a single integrated whole. They remain detached and stand out boldly one against the other.
Working out of doors, confronting nature directly, was fundamental to the group's work. They enjoyed the rigors of camping and painting in the north as they continued their boxcar trips through Algoma. They sketched on small 8 by 10 inch boards using oil paints, which although slow drying and difficult to get out of the bush, provided them with an ideal working medium.
The immediacy of their experiences elicited a rich layering of emotional response, from serenity and peace, far from the crowded cities, to unbridled enthusiasm for the wealth of novel motifs and the sheer sensuality of wilderness nature. Intensely personal, their quick oil sketches capture in their dots, dashes, smudges, and draggings not only the energy of the painter encountering nature, but the vitality of nature itself, locked in the thick pigment and surface textures. These artists possessed a sureness of touch and a pleasure in paint for paint's sake, which resulted in some of the most expressive landscapes ever produced in Canada. Enormous skill was required to recreate the freshness and spontaneity of these small paintings in full-scale canvases, a task Thompson and the group undertook during the winter months back in Toronto. In the studio environment, with pressures of time and adverse weather conditions eliminated, corrections could be made to faulty compositions. Colors could be more effectively orchestrated, and the technique more closely controlled. In many instances, the large-scale works are splendid refinements of the original sketch.
During the first crucial decades of this century, group members shared a desire to create works of art that would be unmistakably Canadian, an accomplishment they believed that would make a vital contribution to the nation's economic, political, and social development, as well as artistic self-awareness.
As they wrote in their first exhibition catalog of May 1920, the group of 7 artists whose pictures are here exhibited have for several years held a like vision concerning art in Canada. They are all imbued with the idea that an art must grow and flower in the land before the country will be a real home for its people. Throughout the 20s, the group exhibited regularly at the Art Gallery of Toronto, now called the Art Gallery of Ontario, seeking an audience which would appreciate their attempts to throw off the European colonial yoke and communicate meaningfully about the Canadian condition. Over the next several decades, group members explored the breadth of the Canadian land, far beyond the borders of Ontario, from the Atlantic provinces and Quebec to the prairies, Rockies, the West Coast, and even the Arctic.
Remarkably, out of an array of European styles, Thompson and the group were able to create a language of expression which was not only their own, but aptly suited to the untamed landscapes of Canada's north. Despite a passionate embrace of the natural world, their work emphatically rejects sentimentality. Instead, their paintings are rugged, optimistic, romantic perhaps, but fiercely romantic.
We had commenced our great adventure. We lived in a continuous blaze of enthusiasm. We were at times very serious and concerned, at other times hilarious and carefree. Above all, we loved this country and loved exploring and painting it. The almost untouched wilderness of Tom Thompson and the Group of Seven, which they so eagerly sought to conquer with brush and palette, is now threatened by more powerful conquering forces, commerce and industry. Their paintings no longer speak of a northern paradise awaiting discovery, but of a paradise which, if not already lost, faces an uncertain future.